Hi everyone, you might be thinking, wow, Matt looks a little bit different today. And for those of you who have not seen our announcement yet, I want to let you all know that Matt is taking a step back from Q4 launch and moving on to his next adventure. He and his wife just welcomed their third child, a baby boy. So he's going to be taking some time back and moving on to whatever his next adventure may be. For those of you I've not met, my name is Nancy Connolly. I am the new general manager for Q4 launch. So you'll be seeing a lot more of me on these webinars throughout the next couple of years, and certainly looking forward to getting to know many of you and working with you more closely, especially at some of the conferences that will hopefully be in person starting again this year. So today what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time talking about what we learned over the past 12 months working through COVID with all of our partners across all of our verticals. So that's across the entire United States, across vacation rentals, bed and breakfast, hotels. And we took a look at that data and decided, okay, what can we learn from this? What trends did we see? What are the takeaways we can take into the remainder of 2021? And so we'll briefly look back, but then also spend a lot of time talking about what we see as next in the travel industry, and of course provide recommendations on what you need to be doing with your marketing to set yourself up for success there. So to start, let's go ahead and take a look back. We had a lot of pivoting throughout the past year. It has been a wild ride. And what we'll talk about today, there are a lot of trends that we'll share, but I fully recognize that not everyone falls into one of those trends. But what we'll share is what we've seen across the majority of our customers. So when COVID first started about a year ago now, what we saw is a lot of people were scared, of course, rightfully so. We didn't really know what was coming. And there was a lot of questioning, should we continue our marketing? Should we pull back? And what we saw from a data standpoint is those who invested in their business to continue trying to grow throughout this past time, they won, and they won big in a lot of cases. We saw in the data those people recovered a lot faster once restrictions loosened up and when travel started happening again. We talked about last year that analogy of surfing. So if you're not in the water, you're not going to catch the wave. And that wave is that wave of travel bookings that we knew were going to come, that we predicted would come after those restrictions lifted. And boy, were we right. We saw massive summers and fall last year, and those who were in that water actively trying to get in front of their guests saw their revenue recover much quickly than those who maybe pulled back or went dark entirely. And I think what our biggest takeaway from that is not letting fear drive decision making, but really staying rooted in our data, taking a look and seeing, okay, what are all the economists predicting? What are we seeing in our actual data in terms of our revenue, in terms of traffic, and seeing how can we continue to grow there and not pulling back or making shifts in our strategies purely based off of fear. One of our customers, this is an inn in Chimney Rock, which is located in the Blue Ridge Mountains. They were in this boat in the beginning of 2020 where they obviously were very cash strapped, as many people were at the time. They did pull back slightly on their marketing, but still knew how important it was to stay in that water and stay in front of their guests. And they ended up having a record-breaking 2020 in terms of booking revenue. And March 2021, as they've continued to market for the past 12 months, has been their second strongest month in terms of booking revenue that they've ever had. And the only other comparable months were in June and July 2020 for them, and that's when we saw that wave really, really hit. So they're even surpassing those peak booking revenue months that happened over the summer. So the other thing that we really learned over this past time, and that we saw come true in the data, is this concept of embracing new ideas and embracing new audiences. We know that last year, and we knew going into last year that it was going to be different than anything that we'd ever seen before. So if we tried to do the same thing, focus on the same audiences, and come to the table with the same ideas, that was obviously going to fall flat. The world changed, consumers changed, booking behavior changed. So really, we encouraged people, and what we worked with a lot of our customers on is taking a look at your data and understanding okay, who are my current demographics historically? Do I typically have a lot of repeat guests? Does my demographic typically skew older? And for a lot of our customers, that was the case. So then we needed to figure out, okay, that older market we're seeing in the data is not booking as much as they historically would have. So how can we lean into those different markets? Potentially pushing younger, potentially pushing with families if you do offer availability for kids to come and visit, and targeting our marketing strategies towards a totally different audience. And we saw that really play out in the data, and I think that's going to end up benefiting people in the long run from a growth standpoint. Since now, not only are they going to be having their repeat guests and their historically older demographic return eventually, but now they've gained a whole new audience and have a whole new subset of people who can become repeat guests in the future. Additionally, we needed to think about where are these guests coming from. For those of you who have inns or vacation rental companies in locations where historically your guests need to fly to get there, or you rely heavily on those fly markets, and you can see that data in your analytics by seeing, what states people are coming from, what states people are booking from, and you'll know if they need to be able to fly there. Obviously, over the past year, with flight travel being drastically reduced, we needed to think about, okay, how can we still drive guests and focus on that drive market capability? So what that looked like, it's promoting different creative ideas. So it could be something like the staycation concept. So we had a customer who historically was in a very heavy fly market, so really was negatively impacted as soon as COVID hit, and a lot of the air travel just went off the grid. So they needed to figure out, how can we lean into this drive market and bring in some of our local guests more while not diluting our overall price strategy in the market and giving away something for substantially less across the whole country, or if people are going to be flying from further away. So they put together a staycation special, so just for people who are looking to take a vacation locally. They tried this back in April when COVID first was kind of in its peak, and it bombed. It was terrible, did not do well at all. But they looked at that and said, okay, we still believe this is a good idea. Several months later, especially as people were coming to terms with more of that staycation market and ability to still travel locally without flying, they went ahead and tried it again. And it was wildly successful. So we worked with them on a whole series of marketing campaigns across different mediums. So whether it was email marketing, PPC, promoting it on their social, and this brought in over $200,000 in booking revenue. So I think the lesson there learned is not, it's not just try something and then if it doesn't work, try something else new. It's try something, check it, evaluate what was effective, what was not, and then try that again. And I think that's something that we're definitely going to be taking into 2021, of what worked in the past or didn't work in the past that maybe was a timing issue or maybe it was an execution issue that we think is worth trying again today. So moving a little bit into a different lens. So once you have those guests there, and in order to attract more guests and lean into some of those new markets, how do you get them? And what we learned is that those who created a destination or made their location and experience, those people saw substantially higher bookings than those who did not lean into that. So for example, what I mean by that is adapting your existing offers. It could be coming to the table with new offers. And outdoor was key. So we know that across 2021 or 2020 that people loved outdoor activities. They wanted to spend more time outside. Everybody feels a little bit safer outside typically. So how can we think about, and what I would encourage you all to think about is, how can you make sure that your outdoor amenities are widely featured on your marketing, and across all of your marketing strategies? They're constantly being talked about. They're featured on your website. Guests know what they can do out there. And if you don't have really strong outdoor amenities, I would encourage you to think about, how can we create them? So for example, Settlers Inn is a customer of ours, and they had a large wooded area on their property that was not really used for anything. And what they did is they went and built small, they took a bunch of lumber that they had from elsewhere on the property and built these small cabins that they used as extended dining accommodations, and created this beautiful little oasis out in the woods with string lights and a fire pit and seating and small cabins where everyone could eat within their restaurant, but still be outside and gather together, but in a more safe way. And this was a huge success. Long term, they're planning on turning these will eventually become lodging accommodations long term. So that's a beautiful example of getting creative, using the space that you have to give the market what it's demanding right now. So that's more outdoor time, it's expanded, it's the ability to enjoy restaurants outside. It's just an overall great ambience with fire pits and twinkle lights and really just creating that camaraderie and atmosphere that allows people to still travel, still have great experiences while being safe during these times. Additionally, we have a customer who nearly doubled their restaurant covers just from adding outdoor seating in early 2021. So they maybe didn't do that back in 2020, but it's not too late to do that. And we'll talk about this later, but I think we fully expect the outdoor trend to continue into this year. The other thing that we learned is shifting into how you can continue getting these revenue streams or providing similar experiences but with a twist. So for example, for our bed and breakfast listeners today, having that breakfast time together is incredibly valuable and is part of the experience. And of course, it's something that we want to still be able to offer. So how can we give that to people in a way that's still safe? We had customers start doing a little bed-in breakfast where they would deliver the breakfast to the room so people could still get a great meal, but still have that safety part of being in their room. We had guests start to offer takeout locally and do all kinds of local takeout options to boost their restaurant revenue. And then we think about some of these elements of different revenue streams. So weddings and events. Events really we never saw come back in 2020. There were very few gatherings, and a lot of states, as you all know, regulated the number of guests that you can have at a particular event. And what we encouraged people last year to look into, and we did a whole webinar on this as well, was the trend of micro weddings. So these are those small weddings with a very few limited guests, perhaps elopements. And we did see a lot of people gain that wedding revenue streams from having a whole marketing strategy targeting brides and guests and wedding planners who still wanted to get married in 2020. People still did it. Just because big weddings didn't happen didn't mean that wasn't still going to happen. So how can you uniquely position yourself to still take advantage of those things is exactly the mindset that we encouraged our customers to think about. And I'm sure many of you also leaned into that as well. And then lastly, the idea of this whole working remote or virtual learning element, anything around there where people were able to transform their property, whether it was as simple as adding a desk in the room or creating an office space in the lobby or giving people access to printers or any of that to create and market this ability to go on vacation while you work and this work from anywhere, that was very, very successful. So the last thing that I want to talk through in terms of data trends that we saw was around booking behavior. We saw big shifts in booking behaviors that was a lot different than what we've historically seen. So in general, as people are thinking about booking their travel, they want to know, are you keeping them safe? What are you doing to adhere to protocols? And many of you put COVID statements up on your websites. We worked to put out marketing materials to let people know how they're going to be safe and how they can still enjoy their experience while being safe. And that seemed to, what we saw in the data is if we had that messaging out there, consumers typically felt more safe and were more comfortable to book, and ultimately that led to an increase in conversion. The other element of booking behavior that we saw change was this length of stay. Because people had the option to work from anywhere, or they were already working from home and could then go do that in a destination, or do virtual learning in a destination of their choosing. We saw these length of stays increase across the board. So if typically in our vacation rental space, if it was around a 1 week stay, we saw people extend that to 2 to 3 weeks on average. And the booking windows changed. So historically in the vacation rental space, the booking window would be anywhere from 80 to 90 days out that people would decide to take that vacation. Whereas in the past year, it's been closer to that 30 to 45 day mark. That's telling us that people are deciding to book that travel more last minute. They're being more spontaneous. Maybe they're just getting really fed up and they're like, I can't take it anymore. I've got to get out of here and go somewhere else. And then we think also the more relaxed cancellation policies had an impact on that as well. People felt more confident to go ahead and make those bookings, knowing that guests felt more confident knowing that they could change if the travel restrictions changed again, or if something changed in their lives. But also our customers felt more comfortable doing those cancellation policies because those booking windows were shorter. They knew they would be able to fill that inventory again if somebody were to have to cancel. On the bed and breakfast side of things and in the hotel space, we've seen a little bit of the opposite, where booking windows have actually extended. Most of that has come in the past few months, where typically in the B&B and Hill world, or hotel inns and lodges world as we think about it, that booking window has been a little bit shorter, closer to the 30 to 45 days, maybe even closer to 60 days out. Whereas now, in the past couple months, what we've started to see is that booking window is extending further out. So people are already starting to book their summer vacations. They're booking further out, which to us signals confidence in the future, that they know that they'll be able to take a vacation coming up. But it is interesting to see the switch there from a vacation rental customer to a B&B or a hotel customer. So really, when we think about all of these data trends and everything we've seen across all of the industries and all of the geographic regions that we work with across hundreds of customers, I think our biggest takeaway from this past year is there's certainly no one-size-fits-all approach. Every single business is different, so you need to be in your data constantly figuring out how am I pacing? What does my revenue look like? What have I tried? What worked? What didn't work? What can I take away from that failure? And figuring out how am I comparing to others? And that's something that we challenge our teams constantly on. We encourage them to be sharing insights with each other on what they're testing, what they're learning, what's something that's working really well on the East Coast but not necessarily resonating with our West Coast customers, and even in similar regions. So we're headquartered down here in Charleston, South Carolina. So across some of our Charleston-based guests, thinking about, okay, what's working in the Charleston market right now? And so we'll encourage people to share those macro trends with each other, but also get really granular and push each other to test new things. And you've got to be in the data to be able to figure out what should I be testing, what is working. And so that's something where you can be in your analytics with that, or your PMS revenue stream, revenue monitoring there, to go ahead and take a look there. And if you're not quite sure where to start on that, let us know. That's something that we do all day, every day across hundreds of customers, but we also spend a lot of time helping other people with their Google Analytics. We offer free Google Analytics analysis options if that is something that anyone wants to take advantage of. We give that away for free as kind of our giving back to the community. So if you are like, I have no idea how I did across all of my strategies this past year, I was just trying to stay afloat and fill anything that I could, let us know and we're happy to help take a look there. So I want to spend some time pivoting here to what we see as what's next over the course of 2021 and what we're already starting to see. We are predicting a huge summer travel boom. The CDC recently recommended or put out a new announcement that anyone who's fully vaccinated are essentially cleared to travel and considered low risk. There have been several rounds of stimulus checks this past year, so guests are going to have that extra cash in their pockets, especially if it wasn't something where they necessarily needed it in the past year. And we know this is our first year where we have all survived virtual learning for the past year. So it's going to be the end of the school year. People are going to be worn out. They're going to just be ready to get out, whether that's a parent's getaway and just leave the kids behind for somebody else to watch them. I know my husband and I are probably in that boat of just need to get out of the house, ready for any vacation. We'll go anywhere. We'll fly anywhere, just hoping to finish getting vaccinated so we can get out there. So we know that there is a lot of pent-up demand still, and we have to think about in 2020, we talked about that demographic that was still traveling and that wave that we saw last year, but if you think about it, there's still a huge percentage of the population that has not traveled yet and still has that pent-up demand, and it's probably even bigger than it was last year when things were shut down because there's more of the population that was not traveling. So we know that demand is there. We've seen it happen before, and we think it's going to happen on an even greater scale over this summer and even into fall. And what we're seeing already is we're seeing it in the airlines. I mean, it's all over the news right now. Even just Easter weekend was a record travel weekend in the U.S. across domestic flights. I think it was 1.4 million people passed through airports on just that Friday before Easter weekend, so that was April 2nd. That was the highest number on any single day since March 2020. So for the first time since the pandemic hit, we had our highest single day. But I think what's interesting is that's still less than the same exact day in 2019. So yes, we're still seeing huge increases right now in terms of domestic flight travel, but it's still not quite at 2019 levels. But I think what's encouraging is we still keep seeing these airlines announcing that they're opening more flight routes, they're hiring pilots like crazy, they're raising their prices, and just overall, I've even heard of lots of flights getting canceled because there's not enough pilots and they can't meet demand. So we know it's very clear that people are beginning to travel again, especially as those fly markets begin to open. So we talked about leaning into that drive market. Now is not the time to abandon that drive market. There's still a huge demand for people who are only comfortable driving. I don't think we're at that point yet, and I don't think we will be probably for a while at the point where we can entirely rely on our fly markets again. But now we're seeing more people ready to fly, ready to travel outside of where they can drive. So now is the time to start leaning into those fly markets. So if you're not sure, okay, where should I be leaning into? Take a look at your analytics and see, okay, historically, pre-pandemic, where were a lot of my visitors to the website and conversions coming from? What states we're flying in, and then taking a look at those trends over the past year and see, did I see stark drop-offs there? Did those people stop coming altogether? Did I see that increase in drive markets? And that'll give you an idea of, okay, where should I focus my efforts with that fly market? Let's say you had a ton of people flying in from Texas. As you're thinking through your marketing strategy in 2021, if that was previously a massive fly market for you, think about how you can target those particular people in email, across your social media, in your PPC targeting from a geographic standpoint, and really tailor that message to encourage those people to start flying again and coming back to your location. We talked a lot about domestic travel here, and that domestic fly market. We are not expecting international fly markets to recover until probably 2022. So I think for what we're expecting this year is still focusing on that domestic fly market, so that's within your particular country, or and still continuing to focus on that drive market there. Additionally, the COVID precautions we think are going to be here to stay for the remainder of the year. We still think that masks are going to be a thing. We think that guests are going to continue to value as many contactless opportunities as possible. So if that's checking in, if that is something like breakfast in bed for our B&B innkeepers, If it's something where there's just that keypad entry on a particular unit, as much of that as possible, I think, is still going to be really valued by guests, and something that'll help people feel at ease coming to stay. Additionally, the concept that we learned last year of the idea of investing to position yourself for success is hyper relevant right now, this month, immediately. In advance of that predicted summer boom of travel, now is the time to really be taking stock and figuring out, okay, what do I need to do to get my property in tip-top shape for people who want that outdoor travel, especially as those fly markets begin to open. So we talked about leaning into that drive market. Now is not the time to abandon that drive market. There's still a huge demand for people who are only comfortable driving. I don't think we're at that point yet, and I don't think we will be probably for a while at the point where we can entirely rely on our fly markets again. But now we're seeing more people ready to fly, ready to travel outside of where they can drive. So now is the time to start leaning into those fly markets. So if you're not sure, okay, where should I be leaning into? Take a look at your analytics and see, okay, historically, pre-pandemic, where were a lot of my visitors to the website and conversions coming from? What states were flying in? And then taking a look at those trends over the past year and see, did I see stark drop-offs there? Did those people stop coming altogether? Did I see that increase in drive markets? And that'll give you an idea of, okay, where should I focus my efforts with that fly market? Let's say you had a ton of people flying in from Texas. As you're thinking through your marketing strategy in 2021, if that was previously a massive fly market for you, think about how you can target those particular people in email, across your social media, in your PPC targeting from a geographic standpoint, and really tailor that message to encourage those people to start flying again and coming back to your location. We talked a lot about domestic travel here, and that domestic fly market. We are not expecting international fly markets to recover until probably 2022. So I think for what we're expecting this year is still focusing on that domestic fly market, so that's within your particular country, or and still continuing to focus on that drive market there. A lot of the lessons that we learned from last year are still very, very relevant today, and we predict will continue to be relevant through the entire rest of this year. So we talked about creating destinations and experiences, especially focusing on that outdoor experience and outdoor amenities. If that is not something that you have previously spent a lot of time developing, I would highly encourage each of you to think about, what are you passionate about? What are your existing amenities? Make sure your marketing company knows about those existing amenities. A lot of times, people will randomly bring up this amazing little fire pit location they have looking over the water, but it's not listed as an amenity on their website. There's no pictures of it. And we're like, what? This would be huge right now. We've got to be blowing this up. People want that. They want to be able to just enjoy time outside, especially now that the weather's nicer and heading into the summer. So if you do have those things, make sure your marketing partner is actively promoting them. And then if you don't, think about what are some easy things that you could do to provide those experiences. If you have an outdoor area, it could be something as simple as offering yoga classes to your guests, or promoting a nearby park as something to do while they're staying with you. It could be partnering with local companies who offer boat tours, or maybe you organize a sandcastle building contest, or it can really be anything. So get creative. It doesn't always need to be a financial investment in terms of building infrastructure on your property. Although I know a lot of people did some exciting renovations this past year, so looking forward to seeing those. And if you do find yourself with a surplus coming out of last year and you exceeded budget, that would certainly be something we would recommend considering investing into, because that outdoor trend and the idea of traveling with activities is definitely here to stay. we're seeing in keyword volume, activities related keywords, those impressions, so the number of people searching for those keywords related to their travel or related to their stay, those are going through the roof. Across our website base, our landing pages related to activities, we're seeing increases in traffic there this year. So especially as this weather is getting nicer across the country, we're seeing people want to have activities. It's still becoming more and more of a prevalent term, and people are searching for experiences, not just simply somewhere to stay. So think about how you can provide that offering, get creative there, and then make sure people know what you do and what you offer and what they can do as they're there. And remember, it doesn't always have to be you doing it. It can be people around you, then you're just marketing it as part of the overall experience coming to stay with you. Additionally, the COVID precautions we think are going to be here to stay for the remainder of the year. We still think that masks are going to be a thing. We think that guests are going to continue to value as many contactless opportunities as possible. So if that's checking in, if that is something like breakfast in bed for our B&B innkeepers, if it's something where there's just that keypad entry on a particular unit, as much of that as possible, I think, is still going to be really valued by guests, and something that'll help people feel at ease coming to stay. So we've talked about what we are expecting from this big summer travel boom. Now we want to talk about how do we get ready for that. And what we've seen is that a lot of our lessons learned will continue to be relevant in 2021. Continue to look for ways to create destinations and experiences. If you invested in any of those outdoor amenity upgrades, make sure your marketing company knows about them. Make sure they're on your website. If you have not, try to find something that you're passionate about and that you love, and make that a part of the experience. It could be as simple as creating a yoga class for people outside on the lawn, or a happy hour outdoors, or even adding a fire pit, which is relatively low cost. We're seeing already in the data this year that activities related keywords as it relates to people booking travel are going through the roof. We're seeing increase in those impression volume, meaning people who are searching for those terms. And our landing pages related to those activities related searches are also continuing to increase. We also are predicting that COVID precautions are here to stay. We anticipate that masks will continue to be a thing in 2021, and that people will still appreciate contactless forms of entry, whether it's check-in or access to the door. People want to know how they can maintain safety while experiencing your property. So we've talked about that big summer travel boom that we're expecting, as well as some of the trends that we're already seeing in terms of flights. Now we're going to transition to talk about what you can be doing to make sure that you're set up for success to capture that boom. First and foremost, a lot of those lessons learned over the past 12 months of working in this COVID environment, we believe are still going to be relevant. For example, creating destinations and experiences for your guests. We're already seeing that activities related keywords as it pertains to people booking travel are seeing spikes in impression volume. So we're seeing more and more people searching for those keywords, and the landing pages that are related to activities that people can do while experiencing their stay with you are seeing an increase in traffic. The COVID precautions and overall safety measures, we expect those to continue as well. We anticipate that masks will be continuing through the end of the year, and guests are going to want to know what you're doing to keep them safe. We believe there's still going to be that audience and an appetite for contactless entry, check-in, those code entries for getting into the property, as much of that as you can implement, and making sure that your marketing companies know about that stuff that you're doing so they can get that message out to your potential guests, the better. Because I think we fully predict that's going to be a trend that continues for all of 2021. So we've talked about continuing to invest in outdoor experiences and destinations and activities there. If that's not something that you have done thus far, we highly recommend finding a way to do that, whether it's creating yoga classes out on the lawn or outdoor activities such as happy hours. Really anything that gets people able to experience those activities, but in a COVID-safe way, that is going to be a big moneymaker this coming year. Forbes released a study that said that of people who are planning to travel, 61% of them anticipate that they'll be spending more in 2021 on that travel than they would have originally done, because they're making up for all that lost time in 2020, which means people are ready to spend more and do more with you. So make sure you have an offering there so that you're not leaving revenue on the table. Pivoting slightly, let's talk about your digital marketing strategy. We need to make sure that that is set up for success as well. So what we would recommend doing is taking a look at your website and seeing, are my pages ranking for SEO? If not, go ahead and start creating that stuff now and putting those changes in place now ahead of time, because it takes a long time for that stuff to start showing up. So leaning into that marketing strategy is going to be paramount. If there's only 2 channels that you focus on, we recommend one, going ahead and starting up with a PPC campaign and getting that live. That's something that we see huge returns on, and is something that we personally would love to talk to you about, because we are uniquely positioned in our approach to that, and truly best in class in how we handle PPC and the performance results that we drive for our customers. Certainly would not recommend doing that on your own. I think a lot of times we see people try to take it on their own, and it's really easy to get started and start spending money, but 70% of ad spend is completely wasted. And so if you're just throwing that money down the drain when it could be giving you a really good return, you might as well not be doing it at all. So if that is something that you're open to and ready to invest in, we would love to talk to you about that. Just to give you an idea so you can evaluate if your current PPC program is performing at the levels that it needs to be. Industry average is about a 3 to 5x return on ad spend. What we're doing with our customers is closer to a 5 to 10x, especially closer to that 10x this past year. So I don't mean to say that for us to brag, but more just take a look, and if you're not falling in that bucket, it's probably time to make a change, because you may be throwing that money away. And then that second channel is that SEO that I mentioned. So go ahead and start putting steps in place now, so that when people are searching for those keywords in advance to book that summer travel, your website is up and ready and good to go to show up for those particular keywords high on that Google results page. We want to talk a little bit too about some event marketing. So what do we think the future of event marketing holds? Business travel is expected to increase compared to last year, but only about 20 to 21%. So if that's something that has traditionally been a large revenue stream for you, we do think that you should invest in marketing to event travelers. It just may not be quite the same level as it has historically been. On the wedding side of stuff, in terms of revenue streams coming there, those micro weddings that we talked about and encouraged people to do last year definitely did pay off, and we do think there will still be some micro weddings happening in 2021. But new trends that we're seeing and anticipate is is around the concept of sequel weddings. So what this is people went ahead, did a micro wedding or eloped and got married in 2020, and then ultimately decided that they need to have a second go around this year to celebrate it with a larger group. Perhaps it's a reception, perhaps it's an entire second wedding. And so that could be a huge market for those of you with wedding venues. If your destination offers a romantic getaway, delayed honeymoons is going to be huge. A lot of people who did get married did not have the opportunity or didn't choose to take a honeymoon last year. So making sure to have that a part of your marketing strategy, where you're talking about what are the romantic benefits of coming here, how can you experience, and messaging it as a delayed honeymoon is a good way to lean into that market. And then lastly, on the weddings front, those large, more traditional weddings, we're anticipating will start showing up in greater number closer to the fall. So go ahead and start getting things ready, and anticipate from your planning strategy to lean into those larger ones closer towards the end of this year. And the last piece that we wanted to talk about is all about managing your revenue. I can't say it enough, scream it from the rooftops. You have got to be in your data constantly and understanding that data. So take a look and see, how is your revenue pacing? What is my occupancy? How are my rates looking? How does that compare to other people? Have I seen a change in the length of stay? Has that increased? Where do I want it to look? What do I want it to look like? And have a strategy in place to make sure that you're completely maximizing that revenue and that all of your strategies from a marketing standpoint are consistent and are tying in with those revenue goals. On the VR side, we've had a lot of people reaching out to us, and we predict this to continue to grow in 2021, and they've been asking about how do we add homeowners to our inventory. They're selling out so much across the board right now. They're like, I can't get enough vacationers in these properties to begin with. I need more properties. So we've been working with them on creating a marketing strategy aimed at targeting adding those homeowners to each person's portfolio. If you think about it, one homeowner, if you rent that for $3,000 a week for an entire year, you have a 20% commission on that, and the average lifetime that a home could be in a portfolio is 4 to 5 years. Just from one single home added to a portfolio could be north of $150,000 in LTV. So adding 3 to 4 properties a year is upwards of $600,000, and that becomes really exciting. So all in, I think the story for 2021 is simple. It's how do we continue to invest to grow? How do we continue to get creative, lean into new audiences, and really focus on our revenue and our data to make those data-driven decisions. A quick anecdote: we signed on with a new bed and breakfast customer down in Amelia Island, Florida, in early 2020. So right before the pandemic hit, and you can imagine it was a little bit of a whirlwind at first, but they stayed the course. They did all of those things that we just talked about, and ended up being down about 12% for 2020, whereas other bed and breakfasts that were very similar in that area were down significantly more. And because they continued to lay that foundation and continued to get in front of guests and potential guests, they're set up for an amazing year. They have killed it so far this year. Just in the first quarter of 2021 alone, they have driven 74% of 2020 revenue. So they are pacing to have an absolutely phenomenal year, and we're really excited to continue partnering with them to grow. So as you think about 2021, I highly encourage all of you to get in your data, lay out a very specific plan of how are you going to approach those different markets, what message are you going to get out there, and how are you going to get it out there, and really take a look at each channel that you're doing and make sure it's performing at a level that you would expect it to, and pivot if necessary. So that is all that we have planned today. I hope that this has been helpful for you all. We shared our learnings over the past 12 months with COVID and some of those key takeaways, as well as talked through what we're expecting for this coming year as it relates to the big summer travel boom that we are expecting, and what you can do to make sure that you're set up for success there. Certainly curious to hear feedback from anyone. I'd love to know, are you seeing similar trends in your area? What are you predicting? If you see anything contradicting to what we've shared, I'd love to hear that as well. And in general, if there's anything that you'd love to hear more about or learn more about and you want to see a topic talked about, please feel free to share that feedback. If you did find this helpful, or in general find our webinars helpful, it would be great if you could leave us a 5-star review on Google. Those mean a lot to us and help us tremendously. So if you wouldn't mind taking the time and you did appreciate everything that we talked through today, please go ahead and leave us that 5-star review. And then lastly, if anything we talked about today seems overwhelming, or you're not really sure where to start or how to evaluate your performance, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you out with one of those free Google Analytics analysis that we do. That's something that we just do to give back, and certainly it's not meant to be a sales pitch, or not going to turn into a sales pitch at all, but just let us know if we can help you in any way. And it was wonderful to be with you all today, and certainly looking forward to many more to come. Have a great rest of the day.